like to call the Cook County Board of Commissioners regular meeting for Tuesday, June 9th to order. We have done a roll call. We have all commissioners attending at this time. I will start with the statement regarding meeting due to COVID-19 pandemic using telephone services. And I'll make 5 statements that are to be read before each meeting when we conduct our board meetings like this. Number 1, it's been determined that an in-person meeting is not practical or prudent because of the COVID-19 pandemic and the related peacetime emergency declaration made by Governor Walz in accordance with Minnesota Statutes Chapter 12. Number 2, we have ensured that all members of the body participating in the meeting, wherever their physical location, can hear one another and can hear all discussion and testimony offered at today's meeting. Number 3, we've also ensured that members of the public present at the regular meeting location of the body can hear all discussion and testimony and all votes of the members of the body. We have urged the public not to attend this meeting in person because of the COVID-19 pandemic and have ensured that members of the public can view and monitor the meeting remotely in real time by broadcasting and meeting on the Cook County website. Number 4, due to the COVID-19 pandemic, we have determined that it may be unfeasible for County Attorney Brady Powers, County Attorney Molly Hicken, County Administrator Rena Rogers, and members of the Board of Commissioners to be physically present at the county boardroom at the Cook County Courthouse. Number 5, all votes will be conducted by roll call, so each member's vote on each issue will be identified and recorded. With that, would you please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So we'll go on to making adjustments to the agenda. If you look at your board packet, commissioners, this morning we did add something to B under administrator regarding a CARES task force. I hope you've had a chance to read through that. But since it was on that agenda, we will not take a motion to add that. So I guess I would like to ask if anyone's got any additions that they want to make or any other adjustments to that. State your name, please. If not, then the chair will entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved, Commissioner Mills. Over.
Commissioner Mills, support.
Support, Jenny.
Support by Commissioner Starley. Roll call vote. Commissioner DeShaw.
Aye.
Commissioner DeKirk.
Aye.
Commissioner Mills.
This is Commissioner Mills. Aye. Over.
Commissioner Starley.
Aye. Over.
Commissioner Bershheim is aye. Thank you. We'll go to public comment period. Is there anyone there, or have you received any comments from the public, Administrator Rogers?
There is no one present for public comments, but I did receive one comment that they asked to have read today.
Okay, we can go ahead, please.
Sure. Dear Cook County Commissioners, as I write, I am unsure if the Day Logan permit is on the agenda. If it is not, then I'd like to suggest the members take a short drive. Please drive up to and around my drive. As you do so, imagine this to be your home. If my neighbors were having an event, there would be 20 or more vehicles parked around the big pole barn. There will be 2 outdoor toilets near 2 large garbage bins. I can provide photos showing these cars and the occasional overflowing and storm-strewn garbage. Most of these vehicles have had their doors locked and unlocked multiple times. There have been alarms activated. Many have arrived early at the invitation of day and against the permitted hours. If you can imagine this, you will have a sample of why having a large crowd gather at this residence is not appropriate. These attendees pay large sums to come into my neighborhood. They have felt entitled to pass over my property. Their noise and trespass is exactly why the sheriff was summoned. We also wrote letters to Bill Lane about the hours violations. We did not report the violations every weekend because it got to be too much. Not only are my weekends taken up with my intrusive neighbors, but to follow that up with letters and conversations on the weekdays was too much time spent on something that was just getting ignored. If you are voting on the permit today, please listen to Myron and Jenny. They have looked into the location and are convinced the permit should not be issued. They agree with a couple of members of the Planning Commission who have also checked out the use of the residence. Please remember my letter when this topic comes up in your meeting. My reasons are valid. I just hope you are listening. Sincerely, Janet Effler. And I'm just going to check. Did you come in to make public comment this morning, sir?
No, he's with me.
Oh, okay. All right. So I just wanted to make sure we didn't have another public comment. So that's it this morning, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Very good. We'll move on to the consent agenda items. I guess I'm going to do a roll call vote to make sure that we all agree on this. I'll just call off your name, and if you don't have anything that you want to pull, just say accept or not to pull anything. We'll start with Commissioner Storley. Would you want to pull anything?
No, I do not.
Okay. Commissioner Mills?
This is Commissioner Mills. I do not want to pull anything. Over.
Commissioner DeShaw?
Looks good.
Commissioner Duker?
I do not need to pull anything.
Okay. Mr. Bershon does not want to pull, so I'd entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda items as a whole.
This is Commissioner Mills. I move to approve the consent agenda. Over.
Okay. Motion by Commissioner Mills. Support?
Commissioner Disha, support.
Support, Mr. Storley.
Commissioner DeShaw, okay. Support? Vote? Commissioner DeShaw?
Aye.
Commissioner Duker?
Aye.
Commissioner Storley?
Aye.
Commissioner Mills?
This is Commissioner Mills. Aye.
Mr. Bershon's aye. Passes unanimously. Okay, we'll go on to the Emergency Operations Command update, and we've typically started with Ray Stranager on that. And both of you, thanks so much again for your public messaging and all that you're doing, and appreciate that. So Grace, would you like to start?
Sure, I'm happy to. Can everyone hear me well?
Yes.
Okay. So the case count as of yesterday, June 8th, since the pandemic began in Minnesota, 28,224 people in Minnesota have tested positive for the virus, 23,657 of whom no longer need to isolate, and 1,197 people have died from COVID-19 in the state of Minnesota. This past week, 3,016 additional people tested positive throughout the state. This is less than the previous week, which was around 3,800. However, it's still quite a few people, and this point in time really reflects what was happening about 2 weeks ago. So only now are we really starting to see reflected in the case count what's happened since the stay-at-home order was lifted. And so in the coming weeks, what we see in the case count will be a reflection of the way the case count has changed as more businesses have reopened. The state continues to move toward its goal of 20,000 COVID-19 tests per day. This past week, we averaged between 9,000 and 10,000 tests per day. Updates from our local emergency operations center this week include Elsa Lundy began her 10-week term of AmeriCorps service yesterday. She will be serving 35 hours a week for 10 weeks over the The goals of her service include to reach out and have conversations with local community agencies to better understand changes related to hunger and food access in our community during the pandemic, how their services have shifted in response, and to identify any unmet needs that agencies are seeing in terms of meeting the demand for food in our community. The second goal of Elsa's service involves her being on the ground and supporting local agencies with food distribution, delivery, meal prep, and special projects. The Minnesota Department of Health is working with all county public health departments to prepare the Minnesota Immunization Information Connection, or MIC, a state database in case there's a vaccine for COVID-19 in the future. MDH is altering the database to improve its ability to roll out a vaccination campaign if and when that becomes possible. MDH also shared a tool this week for local public health departments to plan for a mass fatality incident. The tool provides information on cold storage capacity in morgues throughout the state. MDH also released guidance this past week asking that anyone involved in a mass gathering related to protests, community vigils, or community cleanup efforts, primarily in the Twin Cities, urging them to be tested for COVID-19 regardless of whether they are symptomatic. Since the pandemic began, the EOC has received 3,933 donated items. This includes 2,500 cloth face coverings made by community members. To date, volunteers have served 3,390 hours with the Food Access Project in collaboration with local grocery stores, and 113 hours with the Community Support Line. I continue to receive regular requests for planning and preparedness assistance for local businesses and other organizations. The county is planning safety precautions for a partial reopening of the court system and safety planning for elections. This past week, I reached out to Thunder Bay's Public Health Department in an effort to build our cross-border relationship in anticipation of the border reopening in the future. I've also been involved with WCIP in a few different ways this week. I recorded a PSA that I worked on with North Shore Health and Sawtooth Mountain Clinic, reminding both visitors and residents to take precautions to stay safe during COVID-19. I had my standing interview yesterday in the morning, and tomorrow in the evening at 7 o'clock, there will be a special program with Dr. Kurt Farshman, Matthew Baxley, and myself, which is focused on gauging personal risks during the reopening in the midst of the pandemic, and also how to have respectful conversations with friends and loved ones about safety and health and decision-making as we figure out how to go about our daily life in the midst of COVID-19. The community support line has been starting to get calls, has been successful in linking callers to local mental health services, as well as providing general support to people who need a listening ear to manage their responses to the pandemic, and also just the stress and anxiety that go with so much change in our world right now. I've attached a flyer for the program to the email with my notes for the week so that all the commissioners have a copy of that as well. Elsa, her first day after orientation, which is today, will be helping to distribute these flyers at Ruby's Pantry this evening. And that is all I have.
Okay, thank you. So we'll do a roll call for any comments or questions. Commissioner Storley?
Thank you. And thank you, Grace, for all that you're working on. Of course, it seems like every other day you must be involved in a lot of new things, plus carrying on old things. But I would have a comment in regards to the public health educator. I was pleased to see that Kristin DeArruda had been hired. Could you just briefly review again what she's going to be doing in assisting you, I believe, in public health?
Absolutely. So even before the pandemic began, the position was designed to spend about 30% of its time on emergency preparedness and response. I think right now that percent will likely go up because of COVID. So in that area, Kristin will be learning about our general response efforts, becoming familiar with the EOC's operations, and a key area that she will be working with is in contact tracing and case investigation. So MDH, as the demand for that service increases, reached out to local health departments to see if we have the capacity to be a part of that effort. And so that will be a place for Kristin to play an important role. She'll be training in on that right away. And really the effort is regional. So it's the 4 counties, Carlton, Lake, that are working together on the contact tracing initiative, and it's kind of like a train the trainer model. Aside from the emergency preparedness response, the other big focus of the position was to work toward the goals in our community health improvement plan. We have 6 goals in that plan, and she'll be helping to address them all in collaboration with myself, but it's that we haven't had the capacity to do much work on yet our substance abuse prevention and looking at safe and affordable housing as a public health issue and goal. So those are the 2 areas of focus for her in the beginning. And that's it.
That's great. Thank you for that.
Yep.
Okay. Commissioner DeShaw?
Yeah, I was with all your CDC meetings and whatnot there. Do they have a timeline on this? You know, is it 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, a year? You know, how long are we planning this for, or do they know?
I would say the short answer is they're not sure. Right now, the modeling that they do, they update, and I guess also from the Hospital Association through Kimber, the Hospital Association updates their predictions, their modeling every week. They're still predicting the peak of infections to be late summer right now, but what that will look like as the cases start to either level off or go down is unknown. I mean, there's so many variables in the mix, and there's so much that they're learning about the virus. There's certainty when the pandemic will be over, but the hope is that things start to slow down into fall. So I wish I could give you a better answer, but really that's as much as I know and as much as I've been hearing from MDH and from the Hospital Association.
Okay, because I think like a month ago or 2 months ago, whenever that was there, you know, the hospital was predicting we were going to have 25 cases and a few deaths by now, and we're still sitting at 0. And, you know, when are we going to start moving forward here and getting back going in the county?
Yeah, that's a really good point. I think with things reopening and people getting back out and about, it's going to be important to watch what's happening. And it's a difficult situation because I think everyone, wishes we had more clarity on exactly what's going to happen and how we'll respond. I think I feel like the best I can do right now is to just be really kind of paying attention to how things evolve and trying to respond accordingly. But you're right, some of the early predictions played out differently than expected.
Yeah, that's all I got. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Duper?
Great, thanks for the update. Just to follow up with Commissioner DeShaw, Bobby, are you open in Grand Portage now, or does Grand Portage wait for the direction of public health?
No, Grand Portage will be opening, I believe, on the 22nd of this month, so.
Okay, it's good questions just because you operate a little differently, and so I'm just trying to feel out where we're at and what the different recommendations are and what the feeling is. Thank you.
Okay, Commissioner Mills?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Grace, for the update. I was curious about the modeling, what updates there were. I had even heard that for Northeast Minnesota it was looking more like a peak in October, but I didn't hear that from you, and apparently not from the hospital either. So thank you for clarifying that it's still late summer. And thank you for working with the business community and really getting people opening up and operating as best they can and as safe as they can. And just my limited interactions around town, I still sense a lot of tension, a lot of uncertainty, but I also see people integrating, safer practices in their daily lives, and it's hard to adapt these, and it certainly doesn't feel normal by any means. But I do see people out and about more, and getting somewhat more normal, if that makes any sense. And I just hope that we can continue to have good relationships with our business community and with visitors, and of course especially with our citizens. And I just appreciate the tone that you set and just working with everybody. So thank you.
Thanks, Dave. Yeah, I will say that that is definitely emphasis that I see continuing on response, is helping businesses figure out, well, help supporting them in planning, but also once things get busier and they're moving into that implementation of their plans, just making sure that they feel like they have support from the public health department. That's going to continue to be a huge focus for us.
I think, I'm sure you said that well. I really think it's good from my view as a commissioner that, the attention needs to be addressed to this balance of our economy and being safe and considering the health of our people. Fine, delicate balance. I also think it's encouraging that if time permits to look at substance abuse and safe and affordable housing. I really think that that's something that's long-term, that is important in our community health improvement plan. So thank you for all that. So, Emergency Manager Keyport, would you like to make your report at this time?
Sure. Good morning, Mr. Chair, Commissioners, community members. The Emergency Operations Center remains open both virtually and in person, and we welcome Elsa Lundy to our team. She will have a workspace within the Emergency Operations Center, of course, with social distancing. I continue to meet with the state and the region. We didn't meet with the state last week simply because last Thursday was our scheduled meeting, and they had some things going on in the cities, as you know, so they were busy. And regionally, we oddly enough, this year, this spring, summer, and fall, we had planned to do Emergency Operations Center training, and we did have one plan here in Lake County and in Cook County, kind of more local training, and now with this going on, we're living it in real time, but on Monday I'm going to meet with our regional emergency managers just to see how everybody's doing, because everybody's running their EOCs just slightly, just some virtual, some not virtual, some half and half like ours. So we're going to put our heads together and kind of see what we can learn that might be helpful for us here in Cook County. Last Friday, we had a very productive meeting. Myself, Jim, and Brady and Kelly Burke from the Auditor's office. We met with HSEM on a conference call and got some questions answered as to reimbursement processes and what is reimbursable, what is not. Great meeting, very helpful information for Brady and his team. The Association of Minnesota Emergency Managers typically has a fall conference mid-September that will likely be canceled, but they are looking in our new virtual world of ways of at least offering some trainings during that time and having kind of a virtual annual awards ceremony. So maybe things are turning virtual here, but My good news report today would be that Grace received an email last week from a bike tour vacation company. They've been coming up here, a small group, 25 people. They do a little bike ride. But they did it right. They wrote a COVID-19 operating plan with the intent to follow the guidelines issued by the state and local authorities, and they also reached out to Grace for her, advice as to anything else they would need to know. So they did their homework. So to me that's good news. And Grace brought it forward to the EOC for discussion, and we agreed they're doing everything right. So the only other thing I would have to offer today is just for your information, maybe, that when big things happen in our state, like the civil unrest in the Twin Cities, we only have the capability of 12 statewide talk groups in our Armor radio system. When something big, historically, like the bridge collapse, the Super Bowl, they use up all them statewide talk groups. With the exception is they leave 2 of them for landing medical aircraft that we need up here on occasion. But while they're using those statewide talk groups, if we had a wildfire or something else going up here, we wouldn't have capabilities. So the state and others in the region chose to turn, we also have regional talk groups, so what we did for the foreseeable future is we turned 6 Northeast talk groups into statewide talk groups, just in case we need them, just kind of looking forward. But that's what happens in the radio world sometimes. That's what I have for you folks this morning.
Okay, Mike, well, thank you so much for all you're doing, and we'll do a roll call on any questions or comments that commissioners may have. Commissioner Dukert?
No questions. Thanks for all the updates, Mike, and thanks for always having something positive to add.
Yes, very good. Commissioner DeShaw?
No questions. Thanks, Mike.
Commissioner Story?
Thanks, Mike, for your positivity and good report.
Mr. Mills?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Mike, for the update and your continued work, and especially the communications update. I found that very interesting. Do you know how many regional talk groups we have then? Did we also have 12 of those and now we have 6, or how does that work?
Yes, exactly right. We have 12 of those. Well, actually only 11 because one is a hailing. So we have 11. So right now we would then have the remainder would be just normal Northeast talk groups.
Thank you. I think that's all the questions I have.
Okay. And thank you, Mike and Grace, again for all you're doing and great work. We're very fortunate to have you people work as hard as you do and with the skills you have. We'll go on to Community Center. Do we have Diane Booth with us? I believe she's going to introduce
Actually,
this topic.
Actually, Mr. Chair, Diane is present, so we'll have her step up to the microphone up here.
Okay, very good. Welcome, Diane.
Thanks. Nice to be here.
Be an update on
And
condenser.
you may need to really
update
speak
on
up.
condenser system.
Can you hear me from here?
Can you?
Yeah.
Well enough, or do you
Maybe
need
a
me to
little
move
louder.
closer?
Can you hear her, Myron?
Yeah, I think just a little bit louder, but maybe closer to the mic, but I could hear you minimally.
Okay, is this better?
Yeah,
Okay.
thank you. Go ahead, update a condenser system for community center arena.
Thank you. I'd also like to introduce Brian Smith is with me. Brian Smith really is, he's the curling club's key point person on keeping our refrigeration system working at the community center. And Brian has worked with Rink Tech, which is the company that installed that system in 1993, which means it's 27 years old. And they have worked together, and with myself, I'm the dummy, they're the smart ones, and so between all of us, we do make it work. But the issue has come up. As you know, we set aside $28,000 over the last few years to replace the compressors, right? And so we have started that process, done most of that work, and we've spent about $22,294 according to my figures, leaving us $5,706 for compressors. Now, unfortunately, we have a leak that has happened within the system that also affects the condenser. And we need to either fix the leak and repair the condenser, which is about a $10,000 issue, in order for our refrigeration system to work. And that does not have any guarantees that there won't be any more leaks. Or we can spend the money, which is about $35,000, on a new condenser system and actually have a 5-year warranty. And so Brian and I have talked about that. And Brian, I don't know if you want to come up, grab a chair. But I brought him along because I asked Brian what would he recommend, and he said whatever the commissioners would like to do. But I brought him because if you have any technical questions. This has come up, I mean, we knew about this in May, or not May, but March, and then we got quotes in April on it, but we didn't do anything because we were in the middle of the COVID, and it really hadn't become an issue until we were asked, could we be a temporary morgue? And I kind of went, oh, yes, but we have a refrigeration issue that has to get addressed before the curling season of October, but if we would need it as a temporary morgue, we need to address it much sooner than that. So hence our dilemma and why we finally came here in early June thinking it's kind of past the first part of the COVID. We're not into the really height of it, hopefully, for Cook County. Maybe it'll pass us and we won't have an issue, which would be nice, but I think that's probably unrealistic. And it's also right before the planning for the new county budget for 2021. So here we are with our dilemma, asking about what would you like us to do. Our third option, of course, is to have no refrigeration system and not do anything. So.
Okay. So from what I understand, you have $5,000 in the budget for this.
Well, that was set aside for compressors, but we could move it over. It's $5,706.
Okay.
We could move that over
Okay.
and use it for this repair. Or
Okay.
new
For the
condensers.
repair. Okay. Or the purchase, right?
Correct.
Yeah. Very good. Okay, so let's open it up for a roll call on questions or comments. In regards to that, we did get a PDF with more information on it. So I'll start with Commissioner Mills.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Diane, and thank you, Brian, for being there. And I know we talked about this at the Community Center Board meeting, but Brian, I need help remembering the system. And Diane, sorry. So there's 2 compressors and a condenser. Is that the gist of the system?
That would be half of the system. There's technically 4 compressors total within the system. 2 condensers. So 2 compressors.
Okay, thank you. So, yep.
2 compressors go through 1 condenser. And there's 2 condensers outside where the existing leak is at now.
Thank you. So we're just talking about 1 condenser at this point though, right? But there's 2 of them?
There's 2 of them. The repair, if you're going to repair, that would be the 1 condenser repaired. The other quote would be for total system replacement, which would be both condensers and fans for that.
Thank you. That's very helpful to know too, because and so the whole the whole system is from '93. Then is that right?
Correct.
Okay, anything else, Commissioner Mills?
I'm sorry. Yeah. Does that so the 2 condensers are from 1993? Is that right?
Yes.
He said yes.
Okay, thank you. I couldn't hear. Okay. Yeah, and so my impression from the previous discussion at the Community Center Board is it seemed like it was about time to replace it, the whole system, but there was that difference in cost, and kind of what I was thinking. And I'm, of course, very, very interested in what the other commissioners are thinking. But at the Community Center Board meeting, what I was thinking is like, well, if we're talking about a system that's from 1993, and I believe there have been other leaks and kind of issues that we've been dealing with, it seemed like it was about time to replace the whole thing. And I know this is a system that's highly valued by the community for the curling club. And hopefully with the youth curling, that'll be on the uptick too. But then, talking about just our hopefully unnecessary temporary morgue potential, that it seemed like a pretty important thing to have a solid system there. But yeah, the difference in the budget there is something that we're going to have to talk about, I guess, here. Over.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Dukirk.
Could I add one other thing?
Oh, sure, go ahead.
Speak up.
This is Ryan. I'd just like to add that if you look at the repair quote, the bulk of that cost is for Freon. And if there is an additional leak, you're going to have to kind of take that into account, that they'll have to come back up and find the other leak and reinstall new Freon to replace that. And that is a substantial cost in that repair.
Thank you. Okay, Commissioner Dukirk.
Yeah, I'm a bit apprehensive putting a $10,000 Band-Aid on. I would prefer to replace the system since its age and uncertainty. And if this is going to need to be a temporary morgue, we obviously need to check into whether or not any of this can be covered under the COVID-19 emergency funds or in this committee that's going to be developed for this funding for the CARES Act. Over.
See this one.
Okay, thank you. And we did discuss this yesterday in the leadership team, and this could be a good candidate for CARES funding as well, but not COVID-19, according to our auditor.
CARES
so,
Act.
yeah. Good point. Commissioner Storley?
Thank you. So, Brian, you've been keeping it together with duct tape and baling wire. So let's say we have it repaired. Can you still keep things together, or as you say, the company, Ring Tech, would probably have to be called up if something serious happened on a repair? Would you be able to do anything in a extended repair?
They could repair it again. It's nothing I can do. It would be calling upon Ring Tech or some other conditioning company to come in and do the repair. I mean, it is an old system, and they do check pressure check it with the repair, but you can't really see much as far as tubing goes on. There's a whole bunch of fins associated to all the tubing, so it's very difficult to see that if there's any compromised areas unless you pull all the fins off of it. And once you pull the fins off, you can't put them back on again.
Okay, just like a fish. If you pull the fins off, you can't do anything. Okay. Well, we have $5,700 toward a $35,000 new replacement. Yeah, maybe it can be considered part of the emergency needing under the CARES Act. So I'm open to more discussion on replacing the condenser with the rest of the commissioners and Brady at this point. Over.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner DeShaw?
Yeah, is Brady on the line?
I'm here.
Hey, Brady, how much do we got in the building fund?
I'll have to look it up and I'll know in a few minutes.
Okay.
We did put a significant amount in the budget for this year.
Okay.
As well as, so you might as well go on for me because I have to pull up a report.
Okay, yeah, I think it's,
Okay.
the option number 2 is the way to go there, and I think that reading this thing that Rena handed out, this is a good candidate for some of that money there, so replacing the thing and getting it going.
Okay, anything else, Commissioner DeShaw?
No, not until Brady gets back on.
Okay, thank you. Okay, very good. Well, Brady's looking that up. I know we talked about this yesterday, as I mentioned. I would think that it's time to do something. These systems can get very costly, and they not nickel and dime you, they $10,000 you each time sometimes, and it just seems to me that it's very logical that we need to have a replacement, and just the situation of the morgue is not the determiner, but it certainly is an influencer that now's the time to do it, and there is some potential here for CARES funding, but I think from my recollections of the building reserve, we still have enough money in there for this type of thing, but we'll find out more from Auditor Powers on that. It just seems to me that it would be wise to go ahead with this. The sooner the better. So we'll wait for Auditor Powers to give us an update on that building fund, and hopefully we'll have that. We could come back to this after the attorney report, so maybe in considering time, we'll move on to Item 6, attorney on the cooperative agreement for civil commitment representation.
Guess we gotta wait for Brady.
And then Auditor Powers, hopefully we'll be ready for an update after that. So Molly Hicken, I believe, is going to present this part.
Yes, Mr. Chair, I'm on the line. This is Molly Hicken. What I'm bringing in front of the board is an agreement that I bring every year to the Board of Commissioners, but this year it's in a different form, which should allow that it can renew more easily and without authorization by the board. Although if the commissioners are interested, I can certainly bring it forward every year to let you know. So each year I explain that in order for us to move forward with a civil commitment or a judicial commitment of an individual whose mental health or chemical dependency are preventing them from living independently, we need to have that person represented by an attorney. They have a right to an attorney, and through the state law, the counties are put in the position of paying for that person's attorney. On the other side of the action is clearly the county attorney's office. So we represent the Department of Public Health and Human Services in moving forward with the commitment, and the individual is represented by a separate attorney. We have an agreement that's been going for at least a decade with other counties in the 6th Judicial District to, as a group, hire a specific attorney who has this expertise, and he represents all committed individuals. And there's a formula, cost-sharing formula, that's been in place for many years, in which Cook County will pay a portion of the cost, which is commensurate with the number of cases that the attorney proceeds with in Cook County over the last 3 years. So each year we move forward with at least a few commitments, at least a handful of them. Recently there's been an uptick for whatever reason, and the agreement price looks back on the last 3 years and plugs that into its formula. At any rate, for 2020-21, we're looking at an expense of about $1,500 for retaining an attorney to provide services for these individuals for an entire year, no matter the number of cases that we move forward with in the coming year. I would say that's a pretty good deal to get attorney services when that attorney is taking the risk that we could have 10 cases. So I always recommend that we move forward under this cost-sharing agreement. The way this agreement changes is that the counties are agreeing that St. Louis County can enter into this professional services contract with the attorney and determine each county's cost share according to the same formula. However, rather than renewing the agreement every year, St. Louis County will send a memo to each of the counties and say, here's your cost share according to the formula. If any of the counties disagree with their share, then in that case they would notify St. Louis County and we can end the contract. And so we do have that opportunity to get out of the contract if we choose not to move forward. The other change to the agreement this year is that each county has to separately pay the transportation costs of the attorney instead of the attorney covering that in the retaining in the retainer fee. And as I explained in my report, that travel expense should be quite limited. Most of these hearings occur by ITV video conferencing. Even before the pandemic, that's how most of them occurred. The attorney is sitting in Duluth at a hospital with his client, typically. On occasion, we do have contested commitment hearings that happen in the courtroom in Cook County, and if that were the case, we would end up paying for the transport. But because this is such a cost-efficient arrangement for Cook County, I'm going to recommend that the commissioners accept that change to this agreement. And I would ask today that the commissioners pass a motion to authorize execution of the cooperative agreement for civil commitment representation for South St. Louis, Carlton, Lake, and Cook County. I'm available for any questions. Over.
Okay. Well, and I would assume that if Auditor Powers approved this, like was mentioned in the PDF, then we have a budget for it. Is that correct, Attorney Hicken?
Yes, I shared the draft of this agreement with Mr. Powers a few weeks ago, and we do budget for this expense in the court administration account, it's called. That's also the account that pays for representation for parents and child protection actions and some other miscellaneous.
Okay, thank you. So I'll just open this one up for any questions. As a commissioner, would you just state your name and I'll call on you for your comments or questions? I won't do a roll call on this except for the vote. Any comments or questions?
It's Commissioner Disha.
Okay, Commissioner DeShaw?
Yeah, I think it's a good thing to come to the board every year. You know, the board will be changing over here with new people, and I think it's just a good thing that they're aware of what's going on here and about this agreement. So that's all I got.
Okay. Any other comments?
Mr. Chair and Commissioner DeShaw, I will put that, I will plan for that then each year to bring forward, I guess for informational purposes, but also should the county desire to get out of this agreement. I can bring that memo from St. Louis County forward and say this is going to be the expense this year. And then if any commissioners raise an objection to it, we can deal with it.
Okay, thank you.
And couldn't that be under a consent agenda item?
Yes, it could even be correspondence because it wouldn't require action of the commission unless they wanted to.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, but I think we do that with other organizations that we belong to. There's a billing and so forth. Okay, do I hear any other comments or questions? Then I'll entertain a motion to authorize execution of the cooperative agreement for civil commitment representation for South St. Louis, Carlton, Lake, and Cook counties.
This is Commissioner Mills. I move to authorize the agreement. Over.
Okay, do I have support?
Commissioner Disha, support.
Okay, roll call vote. Commissioner Starley?
Aye. Over.
Okay, Commissioner Mills?
This is Commissioner Mills. Aye.
Commissioner Dukert?
Aye. Over.
Commissioner DeShaw?
Aye.
Commissioner Bersheim's aye over, passes unanimously. Thank you. We'll go back to item 5, Community Center Condenser. Auditor Powers, do you have any update on that building fund budget?
Mr. Chair, the system shows $490,000 cash to date. It doesn't show the first half property taxes. That's a journal entry Kelly will be doing. So it will have roughly $610,000 as soon as she makes that journal entry.
Okay.
Brady, this is Commissioner Disha.
Go ahead, Commissioner DeShaw.
Yeah, do we still have building funds in the bond, in that bond?
I don't think it would fit for this purpose. We do, but not in that category. We have equipment, and this doesn't. I don't think this fits as equipment. But we'll use the rest of the bonds. It'll help us in any case. We have extra funds in the equipment. We save money there, so we're going to offset some of our other equipment costs. So that's going to help us in this year's budget in any case. So it's a positive.
Well, we must be saving.
But I don't think we can use it for this particularly.
We must be saving money with the YMCA being shut down, right?
Commissioner DeShaw, that's true. Our utility bill last month was $1,000,
Oh, nice.
which is a tenth of what it usually is. We certainly have invested a little bit of money in doing the repairs while the Y has been shut down. But yes, we've been saving money. Although we are, as I'll report in a little bit, are being requested to open it up again in a limited way. So that cash cow is almost gone.
Okay, any other questions or comments? Okay, then, go ahead, Commissioner DeShaw.
I'd like make a motion to accept the bid for $35,193 to come out of the building fund to replace the cooling system at the community center.
Okay, thank you. Do we have support?
Do Kirk support? Commissioner DeShaw, would you be willing to adjust your motion to come out of the building fund if other resources are not available?
Yes, I would do that.
And I support that adjustment. Over.
Okay, very good. Then we have to change that, the understanding that it will come from the building fund if possible. And I believe that the understanding is that we'll try to submit this for CARES funding as well. Okay, so with that, we'll do a roll call vote. Commissioner Starley?
Diane's coming back up here.
I have one question. The question would be, if it gets submitted for CARES funding, does that mean we have to wait to see whether or not we receive that funding, or can we go ahead and get the repair done? Sometimes there's a wait.
Good question. That's a question. Okay. Auditor Powers?
Mr. Chair, we don't know any details of how the county CARES funding will operate. I don't think, if we have intention of using this, if we need it for a morgue, if we need it for other reasons, I don't think I would wait on that. I think it's going to be, even if it's allowed under CARES funding, it's not allowed under the FEMA funding. We found that out yesterday. But under the CARES funding, I would guess that it's partial funding in any case, because we will be using it for years and years and years to come for non-COVID related. So my opinion is that it's going to be limited funding in any case. We'll go for it, but it's not going to be full funding. I'm pretty certain of that.
So I think the understanding
I wouldn't
is
wait.
that we could, you're right. Yeah. So the assumption would be that we're going to go ahead with this as soon as possible.
Thank you.
Okay. Commissioner Mills?
This is Commissioner Mills. Aye.
Commissioner DeShaw?
Aye.
Commissioner Dukert?
Aye. Over.
Commissioner Bershon's aye over. Passes unanimously. Thank you
Thank you.
Kind of like putting one
for
injector
all
in
that
the
you're
can.
doing up there, and Mr. Smith as well.
You're coming back. Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks, Diane.
So we'll go to agenda item 7, auditor report.
Mr. Chair, that's kind of a holding line, and I do not have a report today.
Good. Okay, well, that's fine. Okay. We'll go then to administrator, and we've got 2 items there for action. First one is to set a closed meeting for labor negotiation strategy. We discussed this yesterday in the leadership team, so I'll just give you a little background and turn it over to Administrator Rogers. This needs to be at a future meeting, and we thought it would be best to have it at a regular meeting, not the committee of the whole. I'm just giving you that for background. Committee of the whole would be next week. We have a pretty good agenda there with, so far we're dealing with budget, and we're going to invite the budget advisory group to join us and then deal with the administrative search. So this would more likely be best for the meeting on the June 23rd. So with that, I'll turn it over to Administrator Rogers for any other information.
Myron, this is Heidi. There's 3 permits under the auditor.
Okay. I didn't, Auditor Powers, would you
Mr. Chair,
Yeah,
I'm
okay, thank you, Commissioner.
Let me take over.
Sure.
Why don't you continue with the administrator for a moment?
Okay. Yeah, I see, the one that I called up on my agenda doesn't have anything under it, and now the one that's on the update has 3 applications, so thank you, Commissioner DeKirk, for catching that. We'll come back to it then. So, Auditor Powers, we'll come back to you and turn it over to Administrator Rogers.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Commissioners. So we have received a request from CCEA, one of our bargaining units, our employee bargaining units, to begin negotiations. This year we will are scheduled to have negotiations with all 3 of our bargaining units, and the law enforcement, 49ers Highway, and the CCEA, which represents our other employees. So I was requesting that we have a closed meeting in which I'd like to include Commissioners, Auditor Powers, Attorney Hicken, and our HR Director, Pamela Dixon, to talk about how they would, what are the goals that this group of people would like us to see in the negotiations in terms of targets or strategies or policy changes to guide the process. So that's what the request is for. My understanding is we need to set that meeting in advance, and I guess I'm recommending that meeting to be set for June 23rd, that closed session. It's as separate from our regular meeting, but scheduled that day.
Okay, and this is according to the open meeting law, and we would need to set the time, I believe, in authorizing as well as today. So with that, open it up for questions or comments and a roll call. Commissioner Shaw, any comments or questions on this?
No comments.
Okay, Commissioner DeKirk?
No comments.
Commissioner Mills?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is Commissioner Mills. And I guess I would just ask that we set the time congruent with our board meeting. In past closed meetings, we've done it within the board meeting, and I don't know that that's necessary, but I'm open to that as well. But just to try to keep things efficient. Right now it's 9:30. I don't know what'll be on the agenda for the 23rd, but perhaps 11 o'clock would be an appropriate time. Otherwise, open to other commissioner suggestions over.
Or what time?
Okay.
What time did you say?
What I'm hearing you say
11.
is that
11.
you would like to see it at the end of the meeting, or if the meeting is
basically.
concluded, we would, or do we wait? I guess that's a question for Attorney Hicken, that if we said 11 o'clock and we finish our meeting at 10:30, or 10:30, then we would have to sit and wait till 11 o'clock, close the meeting and then reconvene it. Attorney Hicken, could you respond to that, please?
Yep, I don't think that it needs to be that specific. If you set it at 11 o'clock and you start the meeting at 10:45, I think that's okay. It doesn't take away from anybody's right to either the closed meeting anyway. But yeah, set the time and the location as close as you can to when it actually happens. But if it happens a little earlier, that's going to be okay. Okay.
And I believe that the way we need to do this, in talking about the logistics, that it would need to be in adjoining conference room, the ITB room. So that would need to be in the motion as well. Question, Commissioner Storley?
It's going to have to be in here.
Thank you. Rena, I'm wondering if ahead of time we could have some background on this, like what have been the goals, what have been the policy, and what changes then are we going to be looking at, so we have so that we have some substance to how we can participate in this decision.
Thank you for that question, Commissioner Storley. Yes, what I plan to do once we set this meeting, I'll send all the commissioners a link to the current contracts, and I'm going to be checking in with our HR person and with, and I've already been having conversations with Auditor Powers, and we will have, some of this is about budget, some of it's probably about changes the county would like to see to be able to, have a better, a better workforce and manage our workforce more effectively. So we'll be looking at those things, and we'll come with some ideas. But by sending the current contracts out to commissioners, they can also come with their own ideas.
That'd be great. Thank you.
Okay. So any other further questions or comments? Then we'll entertain a motion to
Myron?
accept this. Yes.
This is Heidi. You said we're meeting in the ITV room. I just want clarification on that because we're not meeting in person.
So
I think we have to do it for logistics of the recording. We'd have to have a different phone number system calling in.
So
that's what we discussed yesterday.
So
if someone else wants to further explain that.
Yep. So if this is a separate meeting that begins after the other one, we'll close out the first meeting, and then we can just stay in this room and use close the call and then open a new call. If we do the special session within, or the closed session within the other meeting, then we have to leave the video running, and that's what would necessitate us having to be on a different call, because we would have to leave the video running with this call. So if we can do this at the end of the other meeting, and not have to come back and close the first meeting, I think we can just do that in a more simple way.
Okay, so my motion would be to set a closed meeting on June 23rd after the adjournment of the regular board meeting.
At the Cook County Board.
Correct. Thank you.
This is Commissioner Mills. I'll second that.
Very good. Thank you. Roll call vote. Commissioner DeShaw?
Aye.
Commissioner Storley?
Aye.
Commissioner Duker?
Aye.
Commissioner Mills?
This is Commissioner Mills. Aye.
Commissioner Bershon's aye. So it passes unanimously. Okay, let's see if we can go back to the auditor. Do you have any more information on the application for gambling permit?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I intended that for next week's meeting and consent agenda, but if you're willing to look at it today, I think it's pretty simple. You could go ahead and approve that today. It's just like the raffle that is on the consent agenda for Mid-Trail. This is for the Gunflint Lakes Association. It's having a raffle of a kayak on the same day, actually same place, but no one will actually be present. It's done online and by mail. So they paid for the permit, and I guess I just asked for any questions.
Okay, so this could all be done in one motion?
Yeah, that's just a brief memo. The 3 items is a brief memo. It's the permit itself, and then it has to be done by resolution, and it's the resolution form. So those are the 3 items that are listed there.
Okay, very good. Any questions or comments? Please state your name and I'll call on you. Okay, then I'll entertain a motion to approve this resolution for the Gunflint Lake Property Owners Association.
Commissioner Mills, I'll move.
Okay, support?
Commissioner DeShaw, support.
Shirley.
I think Commissioner DeShaw was first, so we'll give him the support. Roll call vote. Commissioner DeShaw?
Aye.
Commissioner Dukert?
Noting for the record that I am part of the raffle committee, I do not receive any compensation for this. I approve.
Thank you. Commissioner Mills?
This is Commissioner Mills. Aye.
Commissioner Storley?
Aye.
Commissioner Burson, aye. Passes unanimously. Okay, then we'll
Thank
go
you.
on to the CARES Task Force proposal that was sent out as an addition, and we included it in the agenda today. I'll turn that over to Administrator Rogers.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Commissioners. So we don't really know what's happening with the CARES Act money. We know that some is coming our way. Before the regular session of the legislature adjourned, they were talking about our share of it would be somewhere between $600,000 and $800,000 that would come to the county. There was some conversation about how percentage of that, I believe it was in the House, would need to be used for community economic development. They did not come to an agreement, and then the session adjourned. So during the special session, I think they have to take this up. This is money from the feds that they've got to distribute. So we know that money's coming. By the time a decision is made and we get that money, it will probably be July, is my best guess. And we know that we have to spend that money by November. So this proposal is really about us getting out ahead of this a little bit, having a plan for ways that we can spend this money effectively, because anything we don't spend by November, we have to send back. And I think that would be too bad if that happened, and not very responsible on our part. So my recommendation, and not really knowing yet what the criteria is going to be, we know that it's about COVID, and it's helped counties address that economic and other expenses related to COVID. So my recommendation is kind of a simple one. It's basically to create a task force, a temporary task force, with the purpose of developing some recommendations on how to spend this money allocated to the county. And the recommendation, I'm recommending a certain group of people. None of these people, or some of these people, don't even know about this yet, so they may not even be interested, but they represent certain groups of which I'll talk about. I would like to include Brady Powers, our auditor, Allison McIntyre, our Public Health and Human Services Director, Grace Krenager in Public Health, and then from our business community, Jim Boyd from the Chamber and Mary Somnus from the EDA, and of course myself, because I don't have enough meetings to go to. So anyway, the purpose, some of the ideas I was thinking about that could be considered by this group, and I've listed them, but I'll go through them really quickly. Costs that are incurred by the county that are not covered by FEMA, that have, that we need to kind of address because of COVID, but they tend to be of more permanent nature rather than temporary nature. A couple of examples of that are the one we discussed this morning, possibility of defraying some of the condenser costs, but also the security windows that we've been putting in the assessors and the auditor's office certainly help us with short-term openings and election stuff to protect our staff, but they would be long-term changes to our building. So those would be examples of things that are happening in the county, and for that reason, I seriously need Auditor Powers to be part of this to help us understand how much and what costs that we need to make sure happen. for the county. Public health, certainly that's a key one here. I think, we've had a lot of conversation in the EOC about contact tracers, once we have, cases up here. And also if we had sheltering costs for people who need to be quarantined but don't have that capability in their current living situation. So setting some money aside to defray some of those costs for both temporary workers or housing costs. The third item that I had was business community support. We hear all the time about our local businesses spending money that they really don't have right now to make their businesses more COVID safe. And, plexiglass, PPE, outdoor seating changes. So I think, maybe a grant program or something that would allow these businesses to get some help with that. And the fourth item was about individuals. So we have county, we have a sort of general public health costs, business support, and then I think also supporting individuals that may be impacted by this. And this is where Allison McIntyre would come in. Things around food security, different kinds of subsistence support. Maybe it's simply a matter of beefing up our cash support resources. But I would look to this group of people to come up with items for the board's consideration, and along with those items, how those things might be operationalized if we decide to put money in those spots. So that's the request, to go ahead and set up that group.
Okay, so we'll do a roll call on questions or comments on this task force. Start with Commissioner Storley.
Thank you, Rena. I think that it's always good to be out in front of situations that we know are going to happen, and hopefully the happening will be a generous amount of money coming into the county, and the wiseness of putting that group together so that we can have a plan due to the fact that we have a restricted time to spend it. So appreciate all your work on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you. Commissioner DeShaw?
Yeah, has the city received any CARES Act money?
And that certainly is a consideration. Nobody has yet. A big bundle of money came to the state, and they had to define how to distribute it. And the last proposals I saw took cities out of it and gave cities their own money, and then the county in general had its bucket separate. So, if that were to change, certainly we would probably be getting more money because the city wouldn't be getting money, and then we would need to include the city in that planning somehow.
So the city is not getting money?
They would be getting money directly, according to the last thing I heard, but that hasn't been settled yet. They would be getting their own pot of money, yep.
Okay, so I think we need to wait to see if they're going to get money.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's a lot of businesses out in the county that are going to need financial support or some kind of help. So that's all I got.
Okay.
Okay, Commissioner Duker?
No questions.
Commissioner Mills?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Rena, for getting ahead of this, and really good to plan ahead for where our needs will be and what costs we can get covered. I think it's really wise to get ahead of this, so thank you for that. Over.
Thanks, Commissioner.
Okay. Yes, and I guess I would assume that if we pass this, that the names will be determined, but this is a proposal to seek these people out, and there may be other people involved. Mm-hmm. But I think I would be comfortable with that as well for a motion. So I'd entertain a motion to go ahead with the CARES Task Force.
This is Commissioner Mills. I'll move to create the task force. Over.
Okay, do I have support?
Support Storley.
Okay. Very good. Then we'll go on a roll call vote for passing this. I believe it'll be a task force to look into the CARES funding. Commissioner Storley, vote.
Aye.
Commissioner Mills.
This is Commissioner Mills. Aye.
Commissioner Dukert.
Aye.
Commissioner Duchamp.
Aye.
Commissioner Bershon is aye. Passes unanimously. Okay, we'll go on to any other administrator updates. To our Administrator Rogers.
Thank you again, Mr. Chair. So I just have a couple of updates. One is we're closing in on our project to finish the windows for the courthouse. We have about 6 windows left. If you were hearing the sounds of hammering and drills for the folks watching us on the video live stream or on the call, that's because they are working on the windows upstairs right above us. So they're really doing a nice job, and I'm hopeful this project will be completed this week. We'll have an update on that later. I think Grace Krenager mentioned earlier something about a partial open of the courthouse. We met last week, and we being Attorney Hicken, Chief Deputy Will Sandstrom, and our maintenance folks, and myself, with a couple of people from the Sixth District Court. They came down from Duluth to look at it. The courts, according to the Supreme Court Justice, Chief Justice, have said to courthouses, you need to open up the courts both for hearings and jury trials again, but also for day-to-day traffic to our court admin's office. We actually have very little traffic that comes to our court admin office, but you can't really argue with the chief judge of the 6th District very well. So we were discussing how we might do that and still keep most of the courthouse still closed to the public. This actually coincides with a need for us to open up for absentee ballots with elections. So it turns out that, and I think my thanks very much to the sheriff and to Will, the deputy that was hired to do transports and court security will be made available 8 to 4 when we have to have the doors open. But it will be limited access to people who need to deal with the courts or who are bringing in a absentee ballot. The upstairs area will still be open as it is now. The door's locked, but they bring clients in for appointments off of the upstairs entrance, off the ramp. Downstairs, we will have it ribboned off. We'll have the 6-foot sticker footprints on the floor showing the path that people can take to either go to court admin or to the auditor's office. Upstairs, people will actually make a circle so they don't come back the way they came from. And we'll close off most of the newer part of the courthouse, which has offices to Land Services and the Assessor's Office, Soil and Water, and MIS, because those offices are going to remain closed to the public. So we'll close those fire doors, and we'll also close the first floor bathrooms to the public, because what I don't want to happen is for people to find out the courthouse is open and just think that they can come in and use our restrooms because that would be very hard for us to keep up with. So we've got a plan, and that controls it. We'll have a deputy here doing the usual security checks, as well as asking people some basic high-level screening things like, do you have a fever, or we will have masks available. We want everybody in the courthouse that comes in to wear a mask. So this is also part of what the court admin has asked for. So we're beefing everything up. We will probably open partially, like in a 10 to 2, to try this out and make sure everything's working okay on June 15th. So we're a week away from that. We'll open up 8 to 4 for those purposes only on July 1st. The rest of the opening of the courthouse, we're going to take a wait-and-see attitude and see how this all plays out. So that's the plan at this point. And other county buildings remain closed to the public right now. Are there any questions about that? It's a work in progress among several departments, and obviously organizations or entities that are outside of us that we're working with. But I feel like we have a good solution in place, but I'm happy to answer any questions on that particular thing before I go on.
Okay, we'll do a roll call on questions or comments for the administrator. Commissioner DeShaw?
No comments.
Commissioner Duker?
No question.
Commissioner Mills?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Rena, for the update. I really appreciate the amount of planning and thought that's going into meeting the requirements and to serving the public. Thank you. I don't have any questions. Over.
Commissioner Starley?
Thank you, Rena, and I believe that the basic idea here is slow and go and see how it is, and appreciate your thoughtfulness in putting this together with other folks.
Okay, and I have no questions, but a comment. Thanks for all you do, Rena Rogers, for getting us through these difficult times. And I know you're working very long hours and many days of the week, and thank you for that. I have
just one more item. This is it's in regard to the census. So the census initially, the way it should have flowed before COVID is that when they launched it, people would have, who have get mail at their home, would have received a form in the mail, and almost at the exact same time, there would have been workers in the field delivering them to houses which don't receive their mail at their home. They receive it through a post office box. Because of COVID, they did not put those field workers in place until just about a week or so ago. So those people are now delivering forms with that 12-digit number the way they would have done it probably end of last March or April. And it's creating some confusion out there because I think a lot of people who we've encouraged to go out and do this online, they've already done it, but there is no check at this point between this first round of people handing them out and the fact that people have already done them online. So people are meeting these census workers. I met them at my own house going, I already did this online. And they're like, well, I don't know anything about that, because they don't. When they do a second check where they would come back and follow up with people who haven't completed it at the end of August, they will know that. They will only be checking for people who haven't done it. But the timing is off, and that's created the confusion. The other thing that's sort of interesting and that I learned this week is why is it that Cook County, who has such high voter participation, so low in their participation in the census? that just doesn't make sense in a lot of ways. We still stand at last place at just under 21%, when the rest of the state is over 70%. Well, it turns out that our response rate and the number of people actually being counted who live here are actually two different numbers. Our response rate is based on total number of properties. And we know that about 60% of our properties are short-term. They're more like seasonal properties or owned for VRBOs or something. So those properties are included in the response rate because the government doesn't know whether somebody lives there all year round or not. So our number of 21% is actually not bad. It's not reflected in the response rate. And the answer I got back from the census folks was, well, if you want your response rate to be better, what we should have is all those people who have a cabin are getting a form as well, and they shouldn't throw it away. They should go out, register that location, and enter that 0 people live there year-round. And that by doing that makes the response rate go higher. The interesting piece is, of course, it doesn't really change the number of people that live here. It just gives us a different response rate. And so as long as the people that live here respond, even if our response rate is low, we will get the benefits of the census. I thought that we weren't getting a good response rate from the people that live here. So it's kind of convoluted. I'm going to kind of keep working to try to figure out how to communicate about that. But it's just a reminder that the people who live here all year round, renters, residents, every person that calls this home really needs to fill out the census, and regardless of what our response rate looks like. So I hope that made some sense. I've found it very confusing and myself to try to weed through it. That's what I got.
Okay. So if there's any questions or comments on that, just state your name and I'll call on you.
This is Commissioner Storley. So yes, Rena, it's very confusing. I phoned in and did my census on the phone, and my last question to the taker was, how soon will my information be recorded? And she said immediately. Mm-hmm. And the second point was, remember that I'm calling from Cook County, not Cook, Minnesota. So I want to make sure that was straightened out. But I still had a gentleman visit me on Saturday with a form, and I said, oh, well, thank you, but I've already done it in voice. And so he said, thank you, and turned around and left. Mm-hmm. But I've had other people say the same thing. So because I have a P.O. box, and a lot of us do, then, I was waiting for the letter, and the letter, like you say, and then he came with the letter, and so I said, no, thank you, I've already done it. But hopefully, yes, that those of us who live here year-round will have phoned in. I did meet another taker yesterday who said he's coming up from Gary, New Duluth to do part of our census, and he has 75 people to call on today in Grand Marais. So, whether they're vacation rentals or whether they're just, whoever, the beat goes on. So thank you for at least trying to get through some of the muddling of this.
So, Commissioner Storley, I did ask them, since we recruited plenty of people to do census taking in Cook County, I asked them why were they sending us census takers from other counties instead of using the people who live here. So they are following up on that.
Okay.
Well, that's great, because the fellow who came to my place on Saturday was from Two Harbors. Mm-hmm. So yes, I'm hoping that the folks who in our county wanted to do that and had time to do it, and the money is good, would be able to do something. So thanks for following up on that.
Right.
Okay, anyone else? Okay, we'll go on to employee concerns, commissioner concerns. Any commissioner reports? Please state your name. I'll call on you.
Mr. Mills?
Yes, Commissioner Mills?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I just wanted to report that I received correspondence amid all of the happenings in Minneapolis and across the country to take a look at our policies as a county and just to see where things are at. I have great confidence in the people, our staff, especially in law enforcement. But I think it's a worthwhile thing to look at policies, especially as our country is discussing ways to better hear and understand and serve people. And so at some point, I think that's worthwhile. I'm not on the public safety committee in the county level, but I am on the AMC's public safety committee, and we did have a meeting yesterday afternoon, and there is a number of proposals coming to the state, and so AMC was asking the committee members for input on some of those proposals, and we were given just summaries, and you know, be honest, AMC has not had the time to go through it in as much depth as is necessary, let alone the committee do that. And so, you know, it was difficult having this kind of larger, harder conversation over a conference call, but I think it was pretty well managed, and nothing was voted on because of the complexity of some of these issues. But the input was gathered about concerns regarding some of the potential legislation, and we'll just see what happens at the state level. It's interesting though, you know, just the demographics and the dynamics of different parts of the state. You know, there's 86 counties. 87 counties, thank you. And you know, the vast majority are rural and don't have a very diverse population. But these are things that are certainly affecting us all, and we live in a much larger culture than just our county. And so it's just tricky, but yeah, I just wanted to give I can forward Rena the AMC summary, and she can forward it to the rest of the commissioners just to keep you on the loop on what's being discussed. But I think that was all I wanted to report on for now. Over.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Mills, and good suggestion. Any other commissioner report?
I got commissioner concerns.
Commissioner DeShaw, I believe was first.
I was just wondering this, I don't know if this is a PHHS question or not there, about our clients in the wilderness treatment program. Are these clients getting the services that they need? And, you know, with everything going on there, I think this is a very fragile time for some of them. There is no meetings open for them to go to. What resources are we giving them to cope with this, you know?
I believe that that upstairs, the wilderness outpatient program are still seeing individuals up there on a regular basis. One of the reasons that it's been a little tricky, like planning some of these projects and making sure the doorways are still open and allowing people to come up and meet. I can't answer that question in any more detail than that. I know that we've also, through the a phone line that they've put in place, have been, you know, putting resources for people to call. But I think to the best of their ability, they have been trying to maintain those relationships and individual work anyway with people.
Okay, I'd like to get an update on that at the next meeting.
Mr. Chair and Commissioner DeShaw, I could add some information in response also.
Okay, go ahead.
So because of my work with the Substance Abuse Recovery Court, I have some interaction with some of the clients of wilderness outpatient treatment. So I know that Greg Barnier, who's the contractor in that program, is individually meeting with those clients, is staying in contact with them, and he has both the video conferencing capabilities through Zoom, and he also has permission to meet with them in person by appointment only. And I just know by nature of the biweekly team meetings with the Substance Abuse Recovery Court that in general, those folks who are struggling with substance use in Cook County are able to meet by Zoom for the various support group meetings. It is not ideal, obviously, for all people. Some people really need that face-to-face interaction. For others, it's actually more accessible to meet by Zoom because they can have that meeting on their phone from their home. They can actually have a higher level of anonymity through those video conferencing style meetings, and they aren't required to get in a car and drive if that's a problem or a barrier for them. That's what I know about the current operations of the Wilderness Outpatient Program. But I agree that it is not ideal to have to limit in-person contact. There are limitations. Over.
Okay. Any other reports or comments?
No, I just like to thank Molly for that, and I agree with her there. You know, I think the in-person contact is very important in that, you know, if there isn't support groups going on where they can get together in the county, you know, if they don't have that support group, they're eventually going to end up here at the courthouse anyway, which we don't want. Mm-hmm. And, you know, it's just something that I've been thinking about here lately, and I feel for the people that do need that contact and that aren't getting it. So that's one of the things there. I'd like to, you know, St. Louis County is starting to open up. Everybody's starting to open up in the country here, and I think we need to start taking steps in that direction too, to get back to some kind of a normal here and get the people the services that they're supposed to be getting from the county. They're all taxpayers. They deserve this. This is their building. This is their commissioner's room. You know, we need to be here as commissioners, showing them that we are here. And that is my opinion only, but that is my opinion. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other reports from commissioners?
This is Commissioner Dukirk. Kind of an odd update with the intense and heavy updates from my fellow commissioners, but I just want to share with you that Governor Walz is recommending a $1.9 million grant to the city of Silver Bay for a multimodal trailhead center. This comes out of the border-to-border route. As you know, Cook County could not make a decision on that, and it was moved to a beginning or ending route in Two Harbors or in Silver Bay. And I just ask that the community support this funding, support our neighbors in Lake County, support the city of Silver Bay. You can reach out to the bonding committee and let them know that you support this. Because it is multimodal, it is for people that do not have motorized options. There will be a picnic area, a playground, lavatories, and showers. The bonding committee are Senators Gazelka, Kent, Portman, Dowd, Benjamin, Nash, Giroux, and Mary Murphy. Again, this is a great opportunity for the city of Silver Bay, and I would hope that community members in Cook County support this for them even though we lost this opportunity, that doesn't mean we can't support our neighbors. Over.
Okay, thank you. Any other report? Okay, meeting updates. We'll have a committee of the whole next week. As I mentioned, we'll have a budget discussion with the budget advisory members being participants in that. They're not going to take an active role, or they may, but they will be connected with us by telephone. And the other one is the administrative search. We will discuss that and hopefully bring forward a recommendation on the search at the meeting on the 23rd of June. We have the Board of Appeals Equalization on June 18th at 6 o'clock. And then we have our June anniversaries. And thank you again, Commissioner Dukirk, for all your work on this. And I'll turn it over to you to recognize our anniversary.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So again, thank you to the staff during these trying times who have filled in and who have stepped up and who have adjusted your lives intensely to continue to support the community. I know that it is difficult when you cannot be in your normal setting and situation, but I know that you are doing everything you possibly can to continue to serve. So we will start out. Matthew Baxley in Public Health and Human Services, thank you for your first year of service to the community. Scott Benokin, 12 years at the Highway Department. Kelly Berg, 3 years in the Auditor's Office. David Eckel, 42 years in our Maintenance Department. Rachel Espy, 6 years in our Assessor's Office. Reed Mayer, 3 years in our Public Health and Human Service Office. Isabella Sheehan, thank you for your first year at the Community Center. Alyssa Smith, thank you for your 3 years in Public Health and Human Services. I am so glad you decided to stay with us. And Justin Thompson, 2 years in the Highway Department. Thank you all for everything you do for our community at work and outside.
Thank you again. With that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Commissioner Mills, move to adjourn.
Support?
Support, Dorley.
Okay. Roll call vote. Commissioner Dukirk.
Aye.
Commissioner Mills.
Aye.
Commissioner DeShaw.
Aye.
Commissioner Story.
Aye.
Commissioner Bersheim's aye. Over. Passes unanimously, and that'll conclude our meeting. And stay safe, everyone. And again, we're so much better if we work together. Thanks to all of you commissioners and all of those for a very productive meeting today.